It has been said that negotiators come together, but their minds don't. It just implies that even though negotiators come together with best intentions to achieve their objectives, due to some reason or the other, they tend not to realize their objectives. Negotiation is an important part of group interaction and even organizational interaction. Whether you're a manager negotiating with your employees, or whether you're the top management negotiating with the trade union members, or whether you're a sales executive negotiating with your customer, or whether you're a purchasing manager negotiating with your supplier, or even a trader negotiating with your investor, negotiation is an important part of modern day communication. It matters. Without negotiation, we cannot get things done. We cannot achieve our goals and objectives. But before I start talking about the critical aspects of negotiation, let's get an understanding of what negotiation is. It's a process in which two or more parties resolve matters of dispute by holding discussions and attempt to agree on the outcome. There are two types of negotiations, generally speaking, or in other words, two different approaches to negotiation. One is the distributive approach, which is known as the win-lose approach. In this type of approach, the negotiators go for a win-lose outcome. The negotiators do not care about the counterparts, whether the counterpart benefits from the negotiation or not. The main purpose is I win. I have to win at all cost, regardless of the outcome for the other negotiating party. The other approach to negotiation is the integrative approach. This is the win-win approach. The negotiating parties in this type of negotiation aim to attain mutual benefit. As a result, the negotiating parties are satisfied with the eventual outcome. Now let's get an understanding of distributive negotiation. In other words, the win-lose approach. Now let's try and understand what is distributive negotiation. Let me start off with an example. Let's say you come across an advertisement for a house which you want to buy. You get to view the house, you view it, you like it, and you want to buy it. You meet up with the house owner. The house owner tells you his asking price. You think it's a bit too much and you can't afford it. Then you and the house owner negotiate over the price. This type of negotiation, the kind of strategy you both engage in, is known as distributive negotiation. Its most defining feature is that it operates under zero-sum conditions. That is, any gain I make is at your expense, and any gain that you make will be at my expense. In other words, every pound that you can get the house owner to cut from his asking price is a pound you save. Likewise, every pound that the house owner manages to extract from you will have to come at your cost. The essence of distributive negotiation is that who gets what share of a fixed pie. By fixed pie, I mean that the negotiators tend to assume or believe that there is only a set amount of goods or services that is available to be divided up. Therefore, the fixed pie cannot be expanded. Fixed pies are zero-sum games in that every pound in your pocket is a pound taken from the other person's pocket. As you can see, when we approach negotiation with this sort of mentality, our tendency is to get the maximum out of whatever that is available. Okay. This sort of negotiation approach is quite common among labor union or trade union and management. And we have read it in newspapers, we have seen it on television, we have heard it from others. The negotiations between trade union and the management often tend to be hostile, aggressive. The trade union members go to the negotiation table trying to get as much money as possible from the management. And every pound that the management concedes to the trade union will increase its costs. So each one is keen on protecting itself. They don't agree on a mutually beneficial outcome. Therefore, as I said earlier, the nature of negotiation tends to be hostile. When you're engaged in distributive negotiation, two things should be remembered. Be clear on your target point and be clear on your resistance point. Now, what is the target point? Target point is what you would like to achieve, and resistance point is your lowest acceptable outcome. If you're not clear on these two, the negotiations tend to drift away. Therefore, it's important to be clear on these two aspects. As long as there is some sort of overlap between your resistance point and your counterpart's resistance point, there exists some sort of settlement to be achieved. Let me clarify this with an example. Going back to the house purchase example I gave earlier, let's say that the house owner's target point, which is his asking price, is £325,000. And your target point as the buyer is £275,000. The owner would like to get £325, which will bring him the greatest pleasure. And if you could buy the house at £275,000, you will be most pleased. But you both will also have your own resistance points. The lowest acceptable offer or outcome. For the house owner, the vendor or the seller, the resistance point or the lowest acceptable offer would be £290, let's say. As for you, the maximum you can go, your resistance point is 310,000. Anything more than 310,000 will be unacceptable to you. And for the vendor, anything less than £290,000 will be unacceptable to him. So the vendor is willing to come down to £290,000. That's his resistance point. And you, as the buyer, are willing to move up to £310,000. So your aspiration and the seller's aspiration somehow crisscross, they overlap. Both resistance points overlapping is the area which offers you the scope to arrive at some sort of consensus. One of the best things that you can do in any distributive negotiation is to make the first offer. When you make the first offer, remember to make it aggressive, but make sure that the offer is realistic. Why is that? Studies on negotiations tell us that best negotiators tend to make the first offer and they tend to set very generous terms favoring them. One of the reasons why you have to make the first offer in any distributive type of negotiation is that it shows sign of power. People who tend to make the first offer are those who speak first at meetings. They demonstrate assertiveness and they take control of the negotiation process. As a result, they gain advantage. Part of the reason why making the first offer can be beneficial is the so-called anchoring bias. It's a psychological term. Anchoring bias means it's a tendency in people to fixate on initial information. When you set an anchoring point, people fail to adjust it based on subsequent information. Studies tell us that savvy, smart, effective negotiators are very good at setting the anchor with their initial offer. It actually controls the other party. It can distort their perception of negotiation. Therefore, it can be an effective tool that can be employed in negotiations. Having said that, distributive type of negotiation does not work at all times. It's not the most effective type of negotiation. It tends to be hostile. Distributive negotiation works when the relationship between the negotiating parties is short-term. Then is there any better approach to negotiation? There is, which is the integrative approach to negotiation. Integrative, or the win-win approach to negotiation, aims at mutual victory or satisfaction for the participants or for the negotiators. Let me clarify this with an example. Let's say there is a sales representative of a furniture manufacturing company. The sales rep receives an order from a medium-sized retailer for £100,000. The sales rep calls up his firm's credit department, but the credit department refuses to process the order because of the retailer's past slow payment. The credit department was not keen on taking any risk. The sales rep the following day meets up with the credit manager, and they both sit and discuss the options. They review the case, they share information, they discuss how best can they resolve this issue rather than taking a confrontational approach. They come up with a solution, which is to get the retailer's banker to provide a bank guarantee in case the retailer fails to make the payment within 60 days. Now, this is a classic way of resolving an issue by thinking creatively. It's not a win-lose approach. Integrative approach to negotiation benefits all the participants involved. In order to make integrative negotiation to work, it's imperative to have the right conditions. The negotiators or the negotiating parties have to be open with their information. They have to be candid about their feelings. They have to trust each other. They have to be sensitive of the other party's needs, requirements, concerns. And they also have to demonstrate a willingness in order to be flexible, in order to arrive at a mutually beneficial solution. You might ask, if it's so beneficial, then why is it we do not go for integrative approach to negotiation? Why does it not happen universally? There are a number of reasons why people do not go for this type of approach even though they would like to, but so many other factors can hamper people from going for a win-win approach. Three major reasons I would cite. One is people or negotiators may not be willing to share all the information. They may not be very open or candid about their concerns. And the biggest reason is politics. People try to play the political game, which basically destroys or hinders from negotiating in a constructive manner so that all parties benefit as a result. Finally, win-win approach does not mean compromise. You don't have to compromise. Compromise is not the best outcome in any negotiation. Creativity is more important than compromising. When you're creative, you're trying to work hard. You're trying to think. You're trying to come up with a very good solution benefiting everyone. One of the ways to be creative is to generate as many ideas as possible during your negotiation, to create more opportunities, trying to help each and every individual engaged in the negotiation so that you can attain better outcomes. Let me close this section with a very good or universally well-known example. Even though it's a simplified example, it captures the essence or the idea of integrative negotiation. Two sisters are fighting over an orange. Each sister wants the whole orange. Eventually, one sister decides to give up so that the other sister could have the whole orange. Now, this is the classic distributive type of negotiation. One sister is happy or wins the negotiation, the other one loses. But it hasn't got to be that way. If both sisters had discussed to find out what each wanted, probably they could have come up with a better solution. One sister, in fact, wanted orange juice, and the other sister wanted the orange peel to bake a cake. And they could have had both had they only discussed and looked into it and shared information.